Lise, who is in Canada and is asking, do you think the purpose of religion can be determined by looking at human psychology? Another great question. Dan, would you like to have a pop at this first?
Well, I want to hear Lise explain their premise to us first. So yeah, Lise, go ahead.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'm hello. Hi. I'm a religious studies student. And I was wondering, when we were studying in our program, we had to take a class called Theory of Religion. So basically, we had to look at it through the context of different lenses. So like anthropology, sociology, psychology was one. And I want to explain why I think, I mean, I don't want to say that religion is created explicitly and only for our own psychological needs. I think that would be very reductionist, but I do think if I can give you a couple of examples of why I think the creation of religion or even just of faith can be attributed to human psychology. The first thing is that I think that Sigmund Freud said that basically he said the belief in God serves as an imaginary father figure for our infantile needs. I wouldn't phrase it that way personally. I would probably say, the idea of having someone that loves you no matter what is comforting when you're in distress. The other thing I would say is that I think that human beings, we don't like not knowing things. We don't like uncertainty. It's anxiety provoking. It's very uncomfortable. So, I think people needed answers for what happens after we die. What happens when the sun goes down? Why do the seasons change? I think, why did the storm happen? I think people sometimes, I think it was created, for our own personal need of just wanting to know things and being scared of the unknown. And I also think, I think that religion can also serve, and this is unfortunate, but I think that some people create a religion or a faith following for their own satisfaction of wanting to be a predator in some way, wanting to control other people. That's what I mean by I think it can be. I don't want to say it's all summed down to psychology because it's very intersectional when we look at religion. But I think a huge part of it is kind of our psychological makeup. And I was wondering what you think about that assessment.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I'm a liberal arts major, okay? So, my assessment on the topic is not scientific. It's just the result of me reading books and going to school and just like knowing what I know about things, okay? So there's probably a million different reasons why people have religion, as you mentioned, it is intersectional, right? There's psychology, there's sociology, and there's anthropological reasons to understand why people like religion. I think you pointed out some key factors there. I think people, being a human being means having psychological uncertainty, and we sometimes handle psychological uncertainty through coping mechanisms. And one of those coping mechanisms can be that we're being taken care of by a higher power, right? And that can sort of evolve into individual beliefs and stuff, right? Like, most religions on earth, they have something to say about their relationship with humans, right? Like either they're making humans do what they do, or they decide people's fates, or there's something to that. I think that is important to point out. You mentioned that some people take religion and use it in a predatory sense. I think people can do that consciously or unconsciously. I don't even think people have to know that they're doing that, but yeah, certainly people can use and abuse those systems once they recognize that that's an invitation to a power dynamic that gives you an advantage, right? Like pastors and priests have had a social advantage and a dynamic over people that aren't those things, right? Like, and that's just the Christian religion, obviously, but that's true for all kinds of religions. So, like, I don't think there's going to be one singular purpose for religion or one single origin point for religion. I think it's multifaceted. I don't know if you can figure out the single point, I'm sure there's a prize waiting for you with your name on it, right? So, but it's never just going to be one thing. It's never just going to be like, oh, what is the purpose? It's going to serve multiple functions. So I think you discussed in great detail some of those functions and what they can serve. But yeah, it's never going to be just one thing. It's always going to be a couple different answers, but that's my take. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to Lise because, like Lise, my degree is in religious studies. And I think, yeah, it is multifaceted. I think psychology is one of those things. I think when we're talking about psychology in relation to how religion's formed, I think we're looking at a lot of the information which we have, which isn't a great deal, actually. But a lot of the information we have, I think, talks about ritual. And I think that's important from the psychological perspective. There's a book that Yale University Press published called Pagan Britain. I think it was by Ronald Hutton, if I remember correctly. And it talks about the Paleolithic and the Mesolithic. And these were the periods which predated religion proper that we have now, that we would call organized religion, which largely started in the Neolithic period. In these periods, the evidence we have, which largely comes out of Scandinavia, is one of burial practices. It's one of how food plays into ritual, and it's all ritual based. And that lends heavily to the idea that psychology is playing a really major part in this, because it is about how people's understanding of the world, people's relationship to the world and the people around them. And it does lean very, very heavily on that kind of psychology of what we are trying to do, which is discover the meaning of the world around us. And that's really fascinating. I've been writing about this a lot lately because I'm writing a book about the history of the religion in my local area. And one of the things I've been studying is I live in an area which does have Mesolithic sites in it from these people who did come over from Scandinavia. So we do have that aspect of it. When we talk about religion, what I would call religion proper, organized religion, that comes in the Neolithic period. It comes up interestingly, and I'm still not sure how strong the connection is, whether this is a kind of an ad hoc fallacy going off here, but I think we can make a loose connection between organized religion and warfare. Those things certainly came up together. Whether whether warfare was in response or in some way related to organized religion specifically, I don't think we can make that connection strongly enough to say that's the case. But what we certainly see is when we move from the Mesolithic period into the Neolithic period, people started settling down, people started having communities, they started having to defend certain pieces of land because it was a period when farming had come in and people had started farming rather than being hunter-gatherers. And it's a period where we really, really do see these communities coming together, and we move from this ritual, which we saw in earlier periods, to these rituals becoming formalized and organized into specific religious practices, into specific religious beliefs. And there's no kind of surprise that wherever we are in the world, because the Neolithic period changes depending on where you are in the world. It happened earlier in some countries than in others. We can't just say it happened from this year to this year. So wherever you are in the world, we kind of see this great big explosion in these ideas about religion, in these organizational aspects coming to religion. And of course, when you've got communities living together and communities farming, then you are going to get warfare. So I don't think there is that connection as such there. But it's really interesting to me how these things come up together, how organized religion and warfare do come up together. I think we move away from the psychological aspect when we get into this period. We move away from that earlier psychological thing, and we get into what a lot of people, what I argue with a lot of atheists about, when atheists say religion is just there to control you, which I disagree with. But I think in this period, we do see an element of that coming up. We do see those elements of control, these rules and regulations and things coming from religion in that period. I have talked for way too long. Would you like to respond to anything I have said, Lise?
For the most part, I agree with you. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that the composition of religion or any kind of faith is solely from a psychological standpoint. One thing I have noticed in studying religion is that religion and culture, so anthropology, are almost inseparable. They will, what culture you belong to is going to impact the belief system in that geographical area and vice versa. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think you're right. I just wanted to know what your opinion was, because my opinion is, I think that the creation of religion, I think, in my opinion, stands mostly on the pillars of sociology, anthropology, psychology. And just to kind of add on to your point before I leave, when you were talking about, the need for ritual, and that really brought me, that kind of brought back this memory. I was talking to a social worker, and she said, people who smoke when they have stress, say they go outside, I'm stressed out, they go outside for a smoke. It's not just the nicotine that gives them the dopamine that helps them feel better. It's the ritual of going outside. There's a ritual component to it that helps them kind of relieve some of that stress. And I think we can also see that in secular society, right? Like when we pull up the flag, we see that or we hear the national anthem, we all stand up, and it's something that we all sing along as a group, and it's a thing that we can collectively have some pride in. So I think that was a really good point to bring up.
Yeah, I think as well, and I'm sure you'll have come across this doing the religious studies as well. And this touches on what both Dan and myself said to the first caller. I think it was the first caller, when we were talking about there is no kind of consistency in the Bible, and we touched upon a couple of reasons why. When religion moves through time and place, it changes. So you don't have Christianity, you have Christianities. You don't have Buddhism, you have Buddhisms. Because when it moves through time and place, it takes on the cultural aspects and the ritualistic aspects of those places it moves through. A great example of this is Buddhism in Tibet. Buddhism in Tibet is probably one of the most recognized faces of Buddhism to the kind of Westerner in the world. But what it also is, what a lot of people don't realize, is that the aspects of the ritual aspects of Buddhism in Tibet are a really strong combination of Mahayana Buddhism and the native Bon tradition of Tibet, and they amalgamate, and a lot of the practices, they burn juniper and the smoke rises. This comes from the Bon tradition, and it's been amalgamated by the Buddhist tradition, and we see this all throughout the world. Sometimes it's much more subtle than that, but we can certainly see it in Christianity as well, as Christianity has moved and changed through the ages, I think it's a really, really important point to bear. In fact, if you're looking for truth, if you like, if we ignore the last caller, and we're looking we're looking for actual truth rather than just trying to shove a fact down someone's throat. What we see this very, very clearly as religions move through time and place. We see this movement, we see this change, we see these different ritualistic aspects, and we see these strong cultural identities being implemented into that kind of sometimes outside religious influence that comes in. And I think it's very, very interesting that we see this.
Yeah, I agree. That's one thing I have noticed as well, is that when the times change, people will interpret things differently according to that cultural change. And like, there are some churches that still won't, like the Catholic Church may not marry. They don't believe in same-sex marriages, but the United Church of Canada is a Christian sect that will marry people, same-sex couples.
Yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine.
Dramatic.
Sorry, go on, please.
Sorry. I was going to say that's kind of a big, huge shift from probably decades, even centuries and thousands. That's a huge progress in change of culture.
Yeah, a friend of mine from Chicago, who was a gay man, has just he put on Facebook today, he was celebrating his 1 year wedding anniversary. And I think it's brilliant that people can come out and be so open about both their faith and their sexuality and have that accepted. I think that is something that a lot of people view it as, well, that's not traditional Christianity, that's not that's religion being watered down. But it's what we've been talking about. It is just another cultural change that religion goes through. And, a lot of people who are Christians who disagree with this are the same Christians who probably have no idea what the original meaning of the Holy Spirit was, because it's not what the majority of Christians today think it is. So it's really interesting that they'll kind of go with it in one aspect, but things they find a bit icky, they won't go with. It's all great fun. Lise, I'm going to let Dan jump in for just a second and kind of have the last word with you. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Dan, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't really have any thoughts, honestly. I think you guys pretty much covered it all. People are hypocrites, and therefore religion is also hypocritical, because religion is a product of humanity, right? So it's going to change. It's going to enforce certain customs and norms at different times that are politically convenient, and also when they feel like it, when they want to justify their own prejudices or their own biases. So that's an unfortunate thing. So yeah, religion does fulfill a lot of psychological needs. We don't talk, like, I try not to talk about that too much on these shows, because it gets kind of rude. I don't want to personally psychologize anybody that calls into the show and say, well, you believe this because, like that last caller said, because you have daddy issues. Because it's like, I have a great relationship with my dad. I don't know. Maybe that, I wonder if that guy does, because I sure as hell would be happy if my son was just harassing people online at 2:00 on a Sunday. But hey, point is,
it does sound condescending, and I can appreciate that, but I try and phrase it in a way that every human being at some point, like we all have inherent emotional needs, and some people find it in different ways.
Yes, and you talked about that too, right? The ritual, right? The smoking isn't just it's not just about the nicotine. It's about, it becomes a part of what somebody does. sometimes. It's hard to leave that, and that's an additional social pressure that occurs there. So it's complicated, right? There's always going to be different cultural and social aspects to it. But I guess if there's one takeaway from this call, I'll always point this out, is that everything that we've talked about in terms of religion is 100% the product of human beings, right? And always will be. There doesn't seem to be any need for a supernatural to explain anything that we've just talked about in the last 10 minutes or so here. So that's what I got, Richard.
Yeah, perfect. Lise, thank you very, very much for calling. Please call again. I enjoyed listening to your calls. It's the first time I've actually got to speak to you in person, but I do enjoy listening to your calls. Please keep calling back. I'm loving these conversations.